Okay, conscious we've got a lot to cover today, we'll get started. So welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is a recipe for success when using Digital Workplace Studio. I'm joined by Mark Richards, our lead product designer, and Rashid Karimi, our senior product designer. Before we get them to do their formal introductions, a couple of reminders. This session is roughly around 45 minutes. Although we're going to keep it interactive by using the Q&A of Zoom, we will have 15 minutes at the end for any live questions. We will then unmute you. The Q&A section you can find at the bottom of Zoom, so please do put your questions in. We do have panelists that can answer them. And without further ado, Mark, I'm going to hand over to you to do your introduction and get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Samantha. So welcome. This is my first webinar, so be nice. Thank you for joining. My name is Mark Richards. I'm one of the usability designers on Digital Workplace and one of the designers who worked on Digital Workplace Studio. I'll pass it over to Rashid.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name is Rashid Karimi. I'm part of the UX team here at BMC, focusing on research projects across ITSM, including DWP and DWP Studio. It's great to be here today to walk you through some of the testing approaches that you can use to measure and improve the usability of your portals. Over to you, Mark.
Awesome. Let's get to that next slide here. Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar with Digital Workplace or Digital Workplace Studio, these next two slides are dedicated to you. So Digital Workplace Studio, it's a suite of tools that we've designed to allow our customers to better integrate Digital Workplace with their other company portals. We had done some user research prior to developing Studio, and we heard from a lot of customers that there's a lot of different portals that basically make up their workplace, and Digital Workplace is only one part of that. And in order to kind of have a more cohesive look and feel, they wanted more customization options in order to kind of make it align with their brand look and feel in these other portals, and thus Digital Workplace Studio was born. We also heard from research that most of our customers are not designers, and so we designed Studio to work a little bit more like a consumer-facing site builder. It requires minimal technical experience. It generally works on a what you see is what you get kind of drag and drop kind of principles, and it supports building your catalog pages for multiple form factors, desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. So just to give you an example of kind of like what the experience used to be like, this is on our 2008 and before version. It was pretty straightforward. It was generally just most catalogs looked just like this. It was a series of kind of services and tiles that you'd basically build out that users could search and click on. It looked pretty much the same for mobile and desktop views. Didn't really have a whole lot of customization options. And so since then, it's been about, I think, 3 years now that we've been working on Studio. This is kind of where we have arrived. This is a 22.1x version, where we have multiple different templates, a lot of different customization options. So yeah, you can take it a lot further than you did before. It's also raised some questions from customers because as they're not designers, this adds a lot more flexibility for what you can do. And so there's typically some questions on how they should approach the design and build for their portal. And that's kind of what we're going to touch on today. And so just to give you an idea of the session outline, we broke it into kind of four steps to kind of create and succeed using Digital Workplace Studio. And so for the build step, step 3, we're going to jump into Digital Workplace and actually give you a tour of some of the key areas. And then we're going to wrap up with some testing considerations, which Rashid will cover, including tools and strategies to kind of make sure that your portal is resonating with your users. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to Rashid just to kind of give a quick overview of the planning step 1.
Yeah, as you saw in the previous slide, having a plan is the first step in each and every process, including product development and creating digital experiences. The two main things to consider when planning any project is number one, to create a baseline so you can measure your improvements over time. Just imagine your product as a journey, and to embark on this journey, you need a starting point, which is a baseline that serves as your reference and also a snapshot of where you are today, and would be helpful to be documented somewhere so that over time you can see the improvements, the progress you've made. And at the same time, you must set clear measures of success, like milestones on your path, guiding you forward. And by defining these measures, you not only quantify success, but also create a roadmap for improvement. It's similar to setting navigation points on a map, ensuring you not only know where you're going, but you can appreciate the progress you make at the end of the day. The other point in the planning phase is a fundamental principle in designing products, and is basically keeping user types in mind when defining and planning a project. You may ask, why is that important? Well, in crafting solutions, you must be attuned to the diverse needs and challenges faced by various user types, whether it's the end user interacting directly with your product or the administrators managing its backend. Understanding these distinct user personas is key for the success for your project. And also, by doing so, you ensure that your solutions resonate with the actual experiences and requirements of the people you aim to serve. So overall, it's important to have a plan from the beginning with a couple of key questions like who you are serving, what you want to fix and why, and how you want to measure whether you're succeeding or not. That gives you a clarity on the goals and ensures your products are inclusive and cover the needs of all user types. Okay, over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Mashid. So given that Mashid and I are both designers, you're going to get a very design-focused kind of approach to building a catalog. So bear with us here. Let's jump to the next slide. So that was kind of a brief overview of kind of like the planning stage, kind of knowing who your basically your users are and who you're going to be designing for, understanding and placing some goals there so you have some measures of success so you can measure and say, hey, we did this right. The next stage is getting into the design. And so this is even before you get into a digital workplace or digital workplace studio. Just some items to consider when you get into design and some things that can give you a really quick head start. Start with branding. So typically, if I was going to go in, start building a page or building a site, the brand guide, which most companies, if not all companies have, is a really good set of rules, colors, image styles, icon styles, and that kind of stuff that you can leverage out of the gate. It gives you a bit of a framework to work against. So in this case, you can figure out what the key colors are going to be for your portal. If there's any guidelines that you should stay on in order to kind of stay on brand. It'll also make your marketing department very happy. So so the brand guide is one place to start. Also, marketing departments can really help you with things like the colors, the logos, the icons. Those are all kind of like the artifacts that you're going to need in order to kind of build out your portal. And you can also, I'm going to show you a little bit later how you can define kind of like the branding settings and how they play into a digital workplace studio. So similar to what I was just talking about with the brand settings, this is an example from BMC's brand guide, and they spec out very specific things on like how images should look. You've probably seen some of our templates that use kind of like this illustration style. Your company may have exactly the same or something similar as far as like assets and that, which you can leverage. Great head start to kind of get up and running with your portal. Also, just since we're talking about kind of like guidelines and templates, we have a bunch of templates which are available, and I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. The templates are a really great place if you don't want to start from like basically a blank canvas. So I'll show you how to leverage those templates and then customize them with your own images. It's really quite quick and easy. So don't let this next slide scare you. But this is this is something that typically designers would use to kind of figure out what goes where. And it's usually, we just call it wireframing. It's a very rapid kind of prototyping method. It can literally be done on a napkin. You can use pen and paper. You can actually do prototyping or wireframing actually in Studio because the components are really quite easy to kind of drag and drop and figure out where they're going to go, and you can move them around. But this is a really great way to kind of keep everything low fidelity, so without getting really deep in the weeds around thinking about colors and images and all the things that I just mentioned. This can really just kind of distill the content that you're going to put on a page. It can help you get an idea of all the content that you have, and then you can try and organize it in this really simplified view. And it allows you to be very nimble when it comes to being able to change things up quickly. So if something isn't working, or it's you end up seeing that you've got a lot of different pages and maybe they all have kind of like different content in different areas, it can kind of help you understand like where those inconsistencies are, and it can help you actually figure out what templates and distill to what templates you might need in order to kind of figure out how you want to build out your site. And then those templates become a recipe for success, essentially. Once you know the key templates that you have that are basically going to be the workhorses for your portal, you can focus on them. And typically it's only 2 or 3 templates that you need. And then basically it's just changing out the content. So the personality, whether it is the catalog content, whether it's the images or iconography or banners or colors to kind of differentiate it. It also drives consistency for your users. So once that they've gotten used to a template, they'll have an easier time kind of understanding if they move onto a page with a similar template on the flow and where to find things. So it's just a quick note on wireframing. Okay, so for the next piece, we're going to get into the build section. So this is the part where I'm going to jump into kind of Studio and the other pieces in Digital Workplace that are related to Studio. And we're going to talk about kind of the templates and some of the other pieces that are going to help you. Give me a half a second here. I get my notes. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see this okay. So right now I'm inside of Digital Workplace right now. I'm going to jump over to Digital Workplace, just kind of on the admin section. So as an administrator, I could log in. I'm just going to get out of Studio here. Most of the magic for Studio in that basically happens once you're logged in as an administrator. Right now, Liam's my administrator, and I'm in the configuration tab of Digital Workplace. And so the key pieces that are related to kind of building out a portal are generally in this section. And so they're generally these 3 pieces. One is the branding, the other is Studio itself, and the other is the navigation manager. So let's jump into the branding quickly. I'm working just a little bit of background. I'm working on a version that is 22.1. I think it's the 0.5 version. We're working actually on 23.3. And so there is a bunch of improvements that are kind of coming to this, but the basic principles are generally the same. So the branding section basically allows you to set your branding. It's pretty straightforward. You can choose things like your navigation style, whether it's dark, light, or gray. In the newer versions, you can actually change and customize the color of this nav bar. You can kind of define if you wanted to have some text in the nav bar. You can place your logo in here. I've kind of got this Apex Global is our placeholder company that we're using, and you can define the width and the height. The other key pieces that are important are your colors. So in the newer tool, we actually have some additional color options that allow you to see if the colors that you choose are accessible, which is super important. But you can see here that I've kind of got some colors defined for my primary, my secondary buttons, and then my active link colors in here. It kind of gives you an overview of kind of like what the different components would look like in here. And you can set all of those colors and that down here. So that's the primary or secondary or active state color. There's some other options on this which are more related to kind of like the login page if you're using kind of the default login page. But that's pretty much it. And then once you've added these pieces, it's as simple as clicking apply changes and you're done. I'm going to close this. Okay, so I'm going to jump into, we're going to get back to branding and how branding kind of plays into Studio pages in a little bit, but let's jump into kind of like the Studio page management view, and I'm going to talk a little bit kind of about what's in this view. So bear with me if you're already a Studio expert. Hopefully this will go pretty quick. So this is where you can, so obviously one of the major benefits of having Studio is that you can have multiple different pages in your catalog. And so we heard from customers before there was one page. It was the only page that customers could basically put all of their services and things that they wanted to get in front of customers. And generally there was potentially up to hundreds of items in there. It was way too overwhelming for people, and they needed a better way to kind of break up their catalog into different pages. And that's a major benefit that Studio brings to the table. So in this, you can basically see I've got a whole bunch of pages that are already kind of built out. A lot of these pages are actually our sample pages. So where you see the ones that are industry related, like the automotive, the entertainment, fashion, and that, those are all sample pages that we have, we've created, and they are all available on our documentation site. I'm going to send you a link as part of like the collateral that we send after this presentation. But on the documentation page, it talks about our sample pages, about automatic deployment. So if you're on version 22.1.07 and later, we preload these pages into your environment. And so you don't even need to import them. They're there, they're waiting for you. You can make a copy of them if you wish, and make them your own. However, if let's say that you deleted them or you're not on 22.107, you can download the sample pages here. It kind of shows you like what the pages are going to look like when they are imported. And there are more links further down here if you want to just download very specific pages. They generally will come down as a zip file. You don't have to unpack the zip. And I'm going to show you an example of just how you can import a page. So it's pretty straightforward. Under actions, we got an import and export. If you're exporting a page, this can be great. If you created a template and you want to save it or you want to move it from one environment to another, you can just you can select whatever pages you wish. You can click on export, and then it will literally download a zip file. If we import a page, I actually have a page that I want to import here, this template theme. You just locate the zip file on your computer and click on open. It's going to pop open an import handling check. And basically this whole top part is basically telling you that if you have the same page on, I guess, both the environment that you've exported it from and the environment that you're importing it from, this is basically telling you how it's going to handle the page status. So if something was published in one environment, you had a published version on another environment, we'd want to avoid those statuses from colliding. And so this is kind of what it's talking about here. The second piece in here is more around catalog sections. So if you have catalog sections that are perhaps different from one environment to another, you might have definitions that are different. So let's say, for example, you could have a HR services catalog section. This basically defines whether you want to use the definition from the source environment or the target environment. We recommend using the destination or the target environment here. So I'm just going to choose that. And so it's going to think about it for a second, and it's done. So let's just unselect these guys here. So my color and theme has just been imported here. You can see the date, the time, and that's pretty much it for that piece. Okay, so let's, this is probably a good place to jump into the editor. So let's open this page that I just imported. And I'm going to just take a quick moment to walk you through kind of like the key pieces of the editor here. So starting kind of over on this panel over here on the side, so there's basically two pieces. One of them is editing or adding components, and so that's this top piece here, and this gives you an access to basically all the drag and drop components that you can add to a studio page. Most of the pieces like asset groups, catalog sections, and that are basically kind of your typical catalog sections. I'll drag one onto the stage so you can kind of see it. They use catalog sections that you've already defined. Whenever you've kind of got your services, whether they're coming from SRM, whether they're coming from native DWP, and you've defined these catalog sections, the list of those catalog sections are basically shown up over here. And so you can kind of go in here and choose any of these pieces that are already defined. So for example, I've got an HR onboarding hiring catalog section. If I select that, you can see that that content basically is shown here. It's based on who you're currently logged in as. So I'm an administrator, I have access to these items. So you can see this is kind of like a view contextual to the user that I'm logged in as. It's as straightforward as kind of being able to kind of drag and drop. You can move these around. So if I wanted to maybe place this at the top of my page or somewhere else, it's pretty straightforward. Once you have got a component that is sitting on the stage, if you click on it, basically you get the properties for it. So that's where I've defined, the section. You can change up some pieces. I'm going to get into theming a little bit later. And we've got some other options in here. So if you wanted to say, hey, maybe I wanted some smaller tiles in here, I could kind of manage that. These are basically kind of like the view preferences in here. You could decide if you wanted shadows, if you wanted carousel, if there was a lot of items in here. If you wanted to show it as a list, you would be able to kind of manage that by going to something like maybe our compact tiles would make a little bit more sense. I'm just going to add a few extra sections in here. I'm just copying and pasting these sections in here so that you could see if you wanted like a list view of these pieces, you'd be able to manage it, and then you'd be able to set limits on these sections. Let's say I wanted 4 items in here, and you'd automatically see the overflow. So one of the major pieces that's helpful to know is the structure of a DWP Studio page. And so there are, at least in the 22.1 series, there are kind of a couple of different pieces. So the outlying container is the page container. The page container I've kind of just hovered over on the to get off the focus on the component, and you can see that the page properties is loaded. The page properties allows you to manage things like the vertical padding, which is basically the space at the very top of the page and the very bottom of the page here. So if I wanted to increase that, I could basically manage that. There's a few settings that we have in here, and you're going to see the content is going to like shift down because I've kind of created this airy view. We also have custom views in here. So if you wanted, you can put in, I'm going to put in a ridiculous value of like 5 here, maybe 5 at the bottom, and you can see that the space is kind of adjusted here. So this works at kind of the entire page level. I'm going to go back to normal on this. The other piece is background, which is pretty straightforward. This is background for the entire page. So you can change up the background, you can switch up the colors, you can add an image to the background. Most of the changes that you probably want to make here from a design perspective, you want to be pretty subtle so that they don't clash with the content that you have going on in here. The content area is basically just a section of Digital Workplace. So instead of managing the entire browser with the content area, you can basically define like a color or something like that. This is an example of where if you're not subtle, it can look pretty brutal, but this is an example of something that might be a little bit more subtle, where you can see kind of like where the bounding box is in here. And if you wanted, you might be able to have, a slightly different background take than what's going on in the outside. I'm just going to go ahead and reset that for now. And the other piece in here, this is kind of what I wanted to touch on, is around color. So the branding settings that I brought in a little bit earlier, I'm going to just show you this. I'm going to collapse some of these sections here. And so if we wanted to override the branding settings, I can click on this customize toggle. And these are the settings that we defined a little bit earlier, where we kind of had our primary button or secondary button. This allows you to override it on the page level. So an example of where you might want to do this is perhaps they're building out a microsite. Maybe that microsite is for like a company event or something like that. Maybe it has very specific branding in that. And maybe for this company event, I want all of my toggles in that, all of my buttons to have a primary state of this pink color. And so you can kind of easily override these. You can get back to where you were before by just clicking on the reset button. You can actually turn this off if you just want to toggle it. So it's pretty straightforward to use. The other piece in here is around theming. And so what theming does is it basically, it will take certain components like catalog sections, it'll take content blocks, and it allows you to basically invert the theme on it. So for example, if I wanted to maybe have this page in more of a dark theme, I could choose dark. I have some, so you can see all our tiles have changed to dark right now. In this case, you would probably want to change up your background on your page to give it that nice dark color. I'm going to throw in like a dark gray. That's just a little bit lighter than kind of my tiles. And you can see now I've got like a display that is, has a very different look and feel than kind of what we were at before. So that's an example of kind of how branding colors can be overridden and how you can basically manage the theme for your page. I'm going to take this back to where we are. Okay, so I'm throwing a lot of pieces at you. There's a couple other pieces that it's important to know. So one of them, I'm just going to get rid of this piece over here. So on each row, so we were on the page level, I showed you the page properties. Whenever you drag a component onto the stage, it gets wrapped in what we call a row. And so the rows have their own properties. So you can basically click anywhere where it highlights where the row block is. And there's quite a lot of properties in here. I'm going to collapse all of these. You can hold down the Option key and then click on these. And it's a quick way to kind of close and open these different pieces. But let's start with the base properties. So the base properties basically allow you to set things like shadows, and it basically allows you to manage things like the margin, the padding, and the space around the component. So you can see that I've got kind of like some of the vertical padding and the horizontal padding are already set at like a normal parameter. If I change that to like, again, airy, you'll be able to see they move in a little bit. You can go to like custom. It's generally recommended to start at normal and then just adjust as needed in here. So the next piece on kind of the rows is, again, similar to what we saw on the page. You could set a background on the row. There's a couple of settings that are related to kind of row backgrounds. And so I'm just going to throw in a color here. Let's go with this one. So once you have a row selected and a background color applied to it, there is a piece. So if this row is basically sitting on the page container, so it's not nested any lower than that, you can adjust the row background width. So there are two options in here. So one is the content area, which is kind of what I showed you before. But if you go full width, it can basically take it to the entire width of the page container. So this is great for adding a little bit more immersive kind of components and views. You can have banners and backgrounds that are applied to that. And I'll show you that in a moment. So it can kind of break up your page a little bit and get it away from kind of like that really tight grid and just make it a little bit more interesting. So that's the other pieces on kind of the rows besides the background is pretty straightforward. You could add a border on it. You can adjust the border radius. So that's really if you wanted to see, I'm going to take this back down to the content area just so you can see it. You can adjust the radius on these pieces. You can adjust the border style. So if you wanted maybe a solid border, you could be very specific on where you want that border to be. You can set the thickness or you can set custom thickness. I'm just going to get rid of the background here so you can kind of maybe see this. So I could add a border maybe to the top of this piece here. I'm going to get rid of the radius. And I'm going to make it a crazy color here so you can kind of see it. So you can kind of manage the borders around your different components. So this is kind of on that row container there. So there's a lot of different options. You can use them to create lines and separators and that pretty easily. That's the border. Label is kind of a general thing. If you just wanted to label a section, it gives you the opportunity to kind of put in a text label. All the text components basically in Studio behave the same way. So you're able to adjust the alignment. You can adjust up the heading style, or if you want to go to paragraph, there's a bunch of kind of pre-canned styles in here. You can adjust the weight. So if you wanted something to be perhaps bold or something, you could throw that in there. And then again, these are more details around, how you want the margin and that to kind of manage. So it's the space between kind of that label and the component. So I've zeroed it out here. If you wanted to adjust it, you could be very specific. And the last thing in here is around kind of the content group. So rows are basically they're containers that can contain multiple components in here. So for example, I'm going to take this content block and I'm going to duplicate it. So I've got a couple of them in here. So this row is the wrapper for both of these content blocks. And so this property down here in the content group, I'm just going to collapse some of these other guys here. They give you some quick ways to kind of manage how you want that content to be displayed. So you can choose it between being full, condensed, or compressed. And it basically just kind of pushes the content in. So it's a kind of a quick way to kind of add some extra padding on the left and right hand side here. Okay, so that's kind of a quick view of kind of page structures, rows, properties, and that. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save it. And I'm going to jump into another piece that's related to pages and page entitlements. So once you're in the Studio Grid, there's options in here where you can define who gets to see a page. So in this case, I've got a home page here, and this page is entitled to a couple of different groups. So if I go into the entitlement manager, you can see that HR administrators and full-time employees both have access to this. And these settings are set in Digital Workplace Catalog. I'm just going to show you that quickly. So this is the catalog that's basically connected to this environment. Under people and people groups, it's as simple as coming in here and creating a new group. You can give your group a name. I'm not going to do that here, but so in this case, let's say we're looking at full-time employees. You could come in here. You can use ITSM attributes to kind of manage who in your organization might get to see something. So this is kind of more attribute level or group level, or you can manage individual users. And just for the sake of this demo, I've just added some specific users to this to kind of demo how this functionality would work. And so let's jump back into here. So in this particular case, I'm going to jump into the portal. So this is Liam's version of the portal. And you can see he's kind of got this homepage and this experience here. If I were to log into this page under maybe a user who has different privileges, and I'm just going to open an incognito window and log in as another user. My other user is Seth. Let's pretend that Seth is a full-time, bear with me. Let's say Seth is our new hire, for example. And so we might want Seth to have a totally different experience when he comes into Digital Workplace. And so you can build out pages that are targeted to specific people. And so Seth's page here is called First Steps. And so as he's kind of just joined the company, we might want to give him a different experience where we're saying, hey, Seth, welcome to the company. We've got a few to-do items that we want you to kind of manage. And these are those items that are sitting down here. And then maybe he's got some different content in here. So all of these things can basically be driven by the entitlements. Let's jump back into it here. So that's as simple as basically just going to one of your pages, going to entitlement, and then you'd be able to specify the group that you want, and then it's targeted at that specific person. Okay, so let's just jump into one of our pages here, and I'll just show you a few more details around kind of the content areas and the blocks. So this is an example of a home page. I'm going to show you. It's this page here. And so I'm going to touch on a few of the different areas that you can kind of manage and how you can manage this view for mobile as well. So inside of this page, there's a lot going on right now. One of the pieces that's super powerful for Studio is being able to target content or tag content to different device form factors. And so up here in the top navigation here are preview affordances. And so by clicking on it, you can get a live preview of what your site is basically going to look like, and it'll render it exactly the same way that you would see it as if you jumped into a browser window and loaded it. So this is an example of kind of the desktop view. And then if I want to go to tablet or mobile, I could just click on those different views and get perhaps a very different view by tagging different content in here. So you can see that there's different styles for how the line of business affordances or tiles look. And most of the other stuff is pretty straightforward. So you can manage all of these when you have a component that you basically styled on a page. So in this case, I have this header area, but I have two pieces that I've defined in here. I've got two content blocks, and the content blocks contain a search and some buttons, and that's pretty much it. In this particular case, this is targeted for mobile. So when you select one of these items and you hover over it, you have the option to basically tag it to these different device form factors. So in this particular case, what I've done is I've kind of created one for mobile or one for desktop and tablet, and I've kind of tagged it there. I want these buttons to show up on it, and so I've kind of turned them on. Then I've duplicated this item, and it's as simple as kind of like duplicating it. And then you could go ahead and perhaps like turn off those buttons, for example. So pretty straightforward. I kind of have my three buttons in here. And if I wanted to remove them, I could just go ahead and do that. So you can make any modifications that you want and then adjust where it's basically going to show up. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So I've already got two of them. So that's one kind of approach that you can take. Another approach that you could do is you could actually just kind of duplicate the entire section. So that's kind of an example of what I've used down here for this browse by department. And so you can see that I've got a couple of different tiles here, one that says human resources, and then one that says HR, and it looks like a duplicate in here. But when I go to my preview, you'll actually see that there's only one of these HR pieces, and that's because I've tagged one of these for mobile, because the human resources on mobile, these things were a little bit more compressed. And so it may not have fit, so I can choose a different label in there and just tag it to that device form factor. So you can see that this is targeted for tablet, whereas this one is targeted for desktop. And then all of these pieces down here, I've decided that I want a whole totally different view for these. And so I've basically gone in and kind of built something a little bit different and then just target it for mobile. So I think that is pretty much a wrap of most of the pieces around digital workplace. I'm going to touch a little bit quickly just on kind of how you get your pages into the navigation manager. And so that's kind of the third piece in here. We've touched on the branding, we've touched on Studio. And so let's get into the navigation manager. So we have a bunch of updates kind of coming for the navigation manager, but at the base level, what it allows you to do is it allows you to kind of build out the navigation for digital workplace. So you can see kind of this is the navigation here. Prior to Studio, we didn't have the ability for you to create multi-level menus, so you couldn't do something like this. It was basically just a flat list of pages across the top. However, in here, you can basically, so you can turn on or off the pages that you want. And so if I turn off these pages, they basically disappear from this, from the sidebar here. So for example, this home page, this is one of my custom pages. It's defined as a home page right now, so I can't turn it off. But let's say my first steps, for example, if I turned it off, it would disappear from over here. And if I turn it back on, then it's going to appear. You can reorder. It's pretty straightforward. You can just kind of drag and drop, choose where you want it to reorder. And if you want to create any menus in that, it's as simple as kind of coming over here, selecting the add menu. You could add, I'm just going to call this a new menu because I'm not very creative this morning. And you can see that there's a placeholder in here and it's just waiting for content. And so you can take any of the content that you have kind of already spec'd to go in here and you can just add it. At least you should be able to add it. Anyway, to this menu here. So it's fairly straightforward. Just a quick note on translation and that. So anytime that you might build out something that might be a custom string inside of Digital Workplace, you can manage the languages for it. So if you did have a multi-language use case, and let's say that you're translating this into perhaps French, you would be able to kind of define those languages in the picker here. And if you chose French, you would be able to kind of edit the labels on these and then put in your translation. This works very similar when you're actually in Studio itself. There is a languages toggle. I'm not going to save my changes here. That allows you to kind of get into the translation mode. I'll show that to you quickly. Let's jump into my color and theme again. So it's up here on the upper right-hand side. If you click on languages, it opens a picker. You can choose the language that you want to translate in, and then you can basically go in and you can start editing your strings in there. So this would be an example of where you could change that to French and then save it. And then anybody in the French locale would receive that translation. Okay. I feel like I've been talking for a while. So let's jump back into the next section.
All right. Thank
Over
you,
to
Mark.
Rashid. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks. All right, let's talk about the last step. Imagine you create all those beautiful pages with the studio that Mark just showed you. And now it's time for testing. Testing basically helps you create products that not only function well, but also provide a positive and effective user experience for your users. Some might wonder, why does it matter? Well, consider this, no matter how innovative or feature-rich a product is, it won't succeed if users find it difficult to use. Okay, and so there are different methods for the testing, and depending on what your goals are and where you are in the process, each of these methods can help you understand your users' needs and evaluate your product's usability. We are going to look at some examples and some methods that you can use to improve your user experience in the next slide. Yeah, so can your users find what they're looking for in your portal? Have you ever asked that question? If the answer is, oh, we hear this all the time, and that takes users some time to go from one page to another to find something, then it's time to test your information architecture. Information architecture is the overall structure of your portal, focusing on how different pieces of information is organized, structured, or how your content has been labeled, and how the navigation has been organized. And so testing information architecture helps to identify how users navigate through the information, how they locate what they need, and how they understand the overall structure of your portal, and so on. There are different ways to test that. For example, we have on the slide cart sorting, tree testing, or a combination of cart sorting and usability testing. But cart sorting is the one that is usually used, and it tests whether user mental models is aligned with the way that the navigation menu has been designed, or the way that pages have been grouped together, whether that makes sense or not to the users. The cart sorting activity could happen before you develop your portal, or it could also measure an existing portal to understand whether the way things has been grouped together and labeled resonates with the user. So I provided an a link on the slide. If you want to learn more about card sorting activity, you can use this reference. Next one, please. The other question that you might encounter is that, can users successfully finish their task on your portal? And this is a fundamental question for each portal. Do users easily accomplish their tasks? Do they encounter any problem? Why are they facing specific issues? How do they try to resolve those issues? What are some of the things or pieces of information that they expect to see on the portal and it's not available to them? Those questions are some of the things that could be asked during a user testing session to help you understand your users' needs, requirements, pain points, etc. And it all helps you walk towards the right direction of creating usable portals for your employees. At the same time, user interviews usually happen before a page is being designed and helps you understand the main goals, needs, and any pain points from the users to make sure you're building a page that closely matches your users' needs. And so is usually in a format of an interview with up to 5 users and could be done in person or remotely. There are some platforms that provide that capability for you to be able to talk to user remotely as well. It's always good to come up with more than one design variations for the main pages and ask users to pick the one that makes most sense to them. This could be done through preference testing, which is the second point here, and is a great way to get feedback on the designs. And last but not least is usability testing. This could be done before and or after something is published to measure how well people can interact with your portal. And it would be great to define 3 to 4 tasks and ask each participant in your test to finish those tasks and observe whether they're facing specific issues and also measure other metrics that you may have and work on improving those issues with your team. Next slide, please. The other way to get feedback is through surveys. And basically that answers the question of do you need feedback from all your team members? So maybe you need some feedback on a design or on a specific question that you may have regarding your portal, and you want to hear from more than 5 people. And that's where you can use surveys and also helps you establish benchmarks and identify trends over time as well. Depending on the goal you define for the survey, you can ask different questions like, how difficult or easy was it for you to find a specific thing? How satisfied you feel with the design of the portal? What specific issues you experienced today, and so on. So there are different ways to run surveys, email surveys, in-app questionnaire. So for example, you wanna ask a specific question about a feature, and then once the system recognizes that a user is interacting with that feature, right after they're done, we can ask them the question of how you feel about this feature, or was there any specific issue with that? And also targeted survey, which is basically if you want to hear from people, let's say in one area, like employees in Europe, you just want to hear their feedback, you can target those population with targeted surveys. Next slide, please. Yeah, and also if you want to understand what features pages are being used the most, that in that case you can also use other tools like Google Analytics or any other analytics tool that is available to you to help you measure any metrics you have over time and help you easily identify problem areas where it needs attention. Just keep in mind, these sort of data only shows you what is going on, what feature, what page, what user, and so on. And for understanding more details about the whys and why is that happening, you need to pair this data with a user testing to dig deeper into the whys behind it and actually talk to users to understand why is that happening. Next slide. So test, measure, refine, repeat. This is an iterative process. All these ways of testing and getting feedback help you establish benchmarks and identify trends over time. By conducting any of these testing methods at the regular intervals, you can track changes in your users' preferences, in their behaviors, enabling you to adapt your portal to their needs. And that is really important to develop this mindset that testing is not a one-off thing. It has to be repeated over time to have maximum benefit for organization and different organizations and their users. And that's all about testing. Back to you, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, Mashid. So just before we get into the Q&A, we are going to send out this slide deck after, and there's going to be a few summary slides. But so these are some of the resources that we kind of talked about during the presentation. So one, if you're looking for those step-by-step instructions, a detailed walkthrough of Studio, if you're looking for some templates or best practices, BMC Docs is the place to go. And there's a link to it right there, which will take you to the Studio-specific documentation. We've also got some resources on the BMC YouTube channel, a couple of links there. There's a whole playlist around service ops that is being developed, and we're working on a bunch of how-to videos for Studio that kind of breaks down the different pieces of functionality that I showed today into some bite-sized, like 1 to 3 minute videos. And the last piece is just a quick link to Studio templates. Again, it's on the docs, but I want to provide a link to that directly so that you can get those templates. They're a really great way to kind of get started and kind of make them your own. Cool. So without further ado, I'm going to open it up for questions. Samantha, I don't know if there's any questions. I think I've seen a couple have come in so far.
Your panelists have been very busy. We have actually still got an open question, so we'll start with that. And I've just unmuted everyone, so give them a brief moment to either raise their hand. So if you do have questions, we can answer them live, or if you feel better putting it into the Q&A section, that would be great. Kath is just answering a question, actually. Kath, do you want to come off of mute and just talk the question through? Because I know it's come from anonymous attendee, just so we can answer that live. And then for anybody else that's still on now, if you want to put your questions in or raise your hand, we'll take some questions from you.
So, hey, everybody. I think the only question that is open right now is about can you test these pages and objects by reviewing how your users use them every day to see challenges, automatically recorded capture how people are interacting on the live environment? And I don't know if you heard Mark mentioning that we can use, or sorry, Mashid was mentioning you can test by integrating to Google Analytics. So there is an option in DWP where you can integrate with Google Analytics. And what we then do is we send off events to Google Analytics for when people click on the screen. And that is captured by Google, and you can then build the reports and analyze what users are doing. We're not sending information about who is clicking. We anonymize that, so it's not revealing any personal integrity challenges, but it allows you to analyze what people are doing. And that is pretty powerful. I think that is one of the things you can use for doing that, if I understand the question right. Do you have any follow-up? Does it answer your question?
I don't know if Kath, that was Mamadou that's responded to say thanks, or whether it's another question. But if you do have, yeah, I've got a yes. So yes, it did. Thank you. I won't go back, Mark, into all the questions that have been answered. We've had 8 or 9. The guys have been very active. And what we will do is we'll share all the questions, the Q&A, the slides, the links, everything will, for those that have gone on some of these webinars with myself and teams before, that will all come out to you. So don't worry about trying to write anything down. We did have a hand raised. I'm just going to check to see if that's still raised, or maybe someone had their question answered. No, we don't have any at the moment. Another question, is my activity still a mandatory page to display? So a question for the panel, or Mark or Rashid, if you want to answer.
Sure. So it in 22.1, it is. We are working on some updates to make it as a non-mandatory page. It is so you can basically place the My Activity component in Studio on any page that you like. And so that's, I think we've gotten some feedback from customers saying that, hey, if I've already got it on these pages, why do I need to have the My Activity page kind of enabled? And so we've been working on a way to basically add some logic or some rules so that you can define after a request is made. We typically, good practice is generally after somebody raises a request, you want to show them the output of that request so that it gives them the feedback that, okay, yep, my request was received. I can now see the status of it. And so that was kind of an integral page before. We're basically allowing you the ability to kind of change those or manage those rules so you can define where the user's going to land after that request. So that was kind of a long-winded answer. Basically in 22.1, it is mandatory. Post 22.1, when we get into 23.3, I believe, or later, that's where we're going to start adding those rules. So that's coming.
Thanks, Mark.
No
Kath's
problem.
just answering that for you. We have a raised hand. So Simon, if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, Simon. Very, very simple question. In terms of usability, one of the things when people are requesting for teams or general, not just for themselves, it's not a personal request, they use collaborators. But the functionality is you raise the request, you don't have to go back into it and then set the collaborators unless you default them. Is there any way of part of building the request process that you can say, you know, who do you want to collaborate with on this request? Now you can set a request that is likely to be collaborated to add a, you know, say a request for a service account created for a team or something like that.
Yeah, so you're talking about basically being able to set rules on a specific request that has a defined set of collaborators added to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so we've heard that, and I believe that's in our roadmap. It's something that we're actively working on.
I look forward to it.
The answer is yes. It's something that's coming. It does sound like it could be very useful. We are making some improvements to collaborators as well that allow you to set the collaborators kind of while you're making the request instead of having to set them after the request as well. So that's an update that we have kind of in the pipe right now.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Okay, Simon, while you're still unmuted, is there any other questions that you have?
Oh, I've got 1,000,001 questions. Today.
Well, we only give you 3 maximum, otherwise you never know. But yeah, if you do have any other questions, feel free to ask.
We're just waiting to get to 22.1 because we're on 21.3, is it? So, but we're waiting for an upgrade slot. We don't want any left this year, so we don't know when it is yet.
I personally had a problem to hear what you asked, actually, Simon. Can you repeat it? It's a little bit muffled sound for me, at least.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying we're waiting to upgrade from 21.3 to 22.1, but there's no slots left for this year. So we're just going through a complete redesign of DWP at the moment. So we're rebuilding things and doing it in a different way and using more of the functionality that we didn't have when we first built it on 19 whatever version.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, going up to 22.1 is really giving you a lot of new functionality. You're probably gonna get 22.107, which has got those industry sample pages that Mark was showing shipped in the product. So when you go to your dev environment, you will see those in the studio already when you launch it first time. So in that patch 7, you don't even have to load the zip file like Mark was showing you. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, we made a lot of improvements. 21.3, I feel like was several years old now. It was our first cut of Studio. We basically had spent about 3 months working on it. And since then, it's been literally a couple of years, and so we've added a ton of enhancements. So there's a lot of really cool stuff coming for Studio. 22.1 has basically the import-export, which really takes it to the next level. Adds a lot of flexibility. I think you'll be really excited for the stuff that we're launching in 23.3. We're adding some cool stuff around being able to kind of create more complex layouts and multi-column layouts. And that, as well as some quality of life enhancements when you're actually in the studio editor. So that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Any dates for that?
Please join us on Thursday, is it, Samantha? On the 26th, Deepak is showing in 23.3 if you haven't seen it. I did one last week, but Deepak is going to do one this week. So join us on Thursday and you will see some of the new cool stuff in 23.3.
Is there a general release date yet, or is it still to be determined?
23.3 is not out yet. It's going to be towards the end of November as it looks now.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, there's one more question, then I'm conscious that needs to be the last because we've gone slightly over a few minutes. So Patrick's asked a question, and Kath, seeing as you're still off mute and started typing away, do you want to just pick this question up? And Patrick, feel free to come off mute.
I'm off mute.
I am on mute. Am I on mute still, or do you want me
No,
to?
we can hear
you're
you.
off mute.
Who muted me? Nobody wanted to hear me. But anyhow, yes, you're asking about what tool would I use for analytics, and Google Analytics is the one we offer, and it's pretty good. We had support for the old version, but the new version that is called Google Analytics 4, we have support since, I don't remember, 22.1 maybe, or one of the patches in 21.3 even. That one has a lot of nice analytics tools and some nice charts. So you can define, for example, you can define a funnel, which means what do I want the users to do here? And are they doing like I want it to be done? And then you can see, are they following what I think they are following? If not, you can adjust your pages and you can adjust your navigation. And you can also see how successful things are. So many analytics tools. It's a bit of work to learn how to use it because it's pretty extensive, but really cool things you can do there.
So are there classes or documents or some way to learn about this?
Yeah, I mean, the integration is, how you do the integration is you go to Google and you get a key, and that key you put into DWP. So you don't really need to do much in DWP. Where you have to learn is in Google Analytics. So you need to go to Google and their training on analytics.
It's a very powerful tool. There's a ton of training, and that some of it's fairly straightforward out of the gate. But if you want to, it definitely you can go down the rabbit hole of getting into the weeds there. Per what Mashid said earlier, Google Analytics can be a really good way to kind of identify like problem areas. So for example, people aren't able to kind of search or find what they're looking for there. That could be a problem area. And sometimes that could lead to a usability session that you might want to maybe get a few people. I think Mashid said around like 5 people you could interview. It could be for more qualitative research where you could dig a little bit deeper down into why people can't do a specific task. And then you can take those findings away and then make updates to your portal and see if that makes any difference, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Yeah, you said to take the key from Google and put it in what, DWP? Was that what he said?
Yeah. Yeah, so DWP has a place for Google Analytics, and it basically just
Sure.
needs the key from Google, and that links it up to your own account so that you can basically see the data.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, I think it's probably good to call it a wrap now, Mark, and I think Mashid is still there. Thank you very much for your presenting today, and